Behind his mask, he still knew himself to be the Prince of Rome. I was all his court now, as we walked the road to Paris in early springtime. I led him along the right roads. I amused him at his command with stories of my wanderings. I nursed him through moods of sulky bitterness. In return, I got very little, except the assurance that I would eat regularly. No one denies food to a pilgrim, and in each village on our way we stopped in inns where he was fed, and I, as his companion, also was given meals. Once, early in our travels, he erred and haughtily told an innkeeper, "See that you feed my servant as well." The blinded prince could not see that look of shocked disbelief, for what would a pilgrim be doing with a servant? But I smiled at the innkeeper and winked and tapped my forehead, and the man understood and served us both without discussion. Afterward, I explained the error to the prince, and thereafter he spoke of me as his companion. Yet I knew that to him I was nothing but a servant. The weather was fair. Arup was growing warm as the year turned. Slender willows and poplars were greening beside the road, though much of the way out of Rome was planted with lavish star trees imported during the gaudy days of the second cycle, and their blue-bladed leaves had resisted our puny European winter. The birds, too, were coming back from their season across the sea in Afrique. They sparkled overhead, singing, discussing among themselves the change of masters in the world. "They mock me," said the prince one dawn. "They sing to me and defy me to see their brightness." Oh, he was bitter, and with good reason. He who had had so much and lost all had a good deal to lament. For me, the defeat of earth meant only an end to habits. Otherwise, all was the same. No longer need I keep my watch, but I still wandered the face of the world, alone, even when, as now, I had a companion. I wondered if the prince knew why he had been blinded. I wondered if, in the moment of his triumph, Gorman had explained to the prince that it was as elemental a matter as jealousy over a woman that had cost him his eyes. "You took of Luella," Gorman might have said. "You saw a little flyer and you thought she'd amuse you, and you said, 'Here, girl, come to my bed,' not thinking of her as a person, not thinking she might prefer others, thinking only as a prince of Rome might think imperiously, 'Here, prince,' and the quick fork thrust of long-tipped fingers. But I dared not ask. That much awe remained in me for this fallen monarch. To penetrate his privacy, to strike up a conversation with him about his mishaps as though he were an ordinary companion of the road, no, I could not. I spoke when I was spoken to. I offered conversation upon command. Otherwise, I kept my silence, like a good commoner in the presence of royalty. Each day we had our reminders that the Prince of Rome was royalty no longer. Overhead flew the invaders, sometimes in floaters or other chariots, sometimes under their own power. Traffic was heavy. They were taking inventory of their world. Their shadows passed over us, tiny eclipses. And I looked up to see our new masters, and oddly felt no anger at them, only relief that Earth's long vigil was over. For the prince, it was different. He always seemed to know when some invader passed above, and he clenched his fists and scowled and whispered black curses. Did his optic nerves still somehow record the movements of shadows? Or were his remaining senses so sharpened by the loss of one that he could detect the imperceptible humming of a floater and sniff the skins of the soaring invaders? I did not ask him. I asked so little. Sometimes at night, when he thought I slept, he sobbed. I pitied him then. He was so young to lose what he had, after all. I learned in those dark hours that even the sobs of a prince are not those of ordinary men. He sobbed defiantly, belligerently, angrily. But yet he sobbed. Much of the time he seemed stoic, resigned to his losses. He put one foot before the other and walked on briskly beside me, every step taking him farther from his great city of Rome, nearer to Paris. At other times, though, it seemed I could look through the bronze grillwork of his mask to see the curdled soul within. His pent-up rage took petty outlets. He mocked me for my age, for my low rank, for the emptiness of my life's purpose now that the invasion for which I had watched had come. He toyed with me. "Tell me your name, Watcher." "It is forbidden, Majesty." "Old laws are now repealed. Come on, man, we have months to travel together. Can I go on calling you Watcher all that time?" "It is the custom of my guild." "The custom of mine," he said, "is to give orders and have them obeyed. Your name?" "Not even the Guild of Dominators can have a Watcher's name without due cause and a Guildmaster's writ." He spat. "What a jackal you are to defy me when I'm like this. If we were in my palace now, you'd never dare." "In your palace, Majesty, you would not make this unjust demand on me before your court. Dominators have obligations too. One of them is to respect the ways of lesser guilds." "He lectures me," said the prince. Irritably, he threw himself down beside the road. Stretching against the grassy slope, he leaned back, touched one of the star trees, snapped off a row of blades, clenched them in his hand so that they must have pricked his palm painfully. Stood beside him. A heavy land vehicle rumbled by, the first we had seen on that empty road this morning. Within it were invaders. Some of them waved to us. After a long while, the prince said in a lighter, almost wheedling tone, "My name is Enric. Now tell me yours." "I beg you to let me be, Majesty." "But you have my name. It is just as forbidden for me to give mine as you yours." "I did not ask yours," I said firmly. In the end, I did not give him my name. It was a small enough victory. To refuse such information to a powerless prince, but in 1,000 little ways he made me pay for it. He nagged, chivied, teased, cursed, and berated me. He spoke with contempt of my guild. He demanded menial services of me. I lubricated his metal mask. I sponged ointment into his ruined eyes. I did other things too humiliating to recall. And so we stumbled along the highway to Paris, the empty old man and the emptied young one, full of hatred for one another, and yet bound by the needs and the duties of wayfarers. It was a difficult time. I had to cope with his changing moods as he soared to cosmic rapture over his plans for redeeming conquered Earth, and as he sank to abysses upon his realization that the conquest was final. I had to protect him from his own rashness in the villages, where he sometimes behaved as though he were still Prince of Rome, ordering folk about, slapping them even in a way that was unbecoming to a holy man. Worse yet, I had to minister to his lusts, buying him women who came to him in darkness, unaware that they were dealing with one who claimed to be a pilgrim. As a pilgrim, he was a fraud, for he did not carry the star stone with which pilgrims make communion with the will. Somehow, I got him past all of these crises. Even the time when we encountered on the road another pilgrim, a genuine one. This was a formidable and disputatious old man full of theological quibbles. "Come and talk with me of the imminence of the will," he said to the prince, and the prince, whose patience was frayed that afternoon, replied obscenely. I kicked the princely shin in a surreptitious way, and to the shocked pilgrim I said, "Our friend is unwell today. Last night he held communion with the will and received a revelation that unsettled his mind. I pray you let us go on, and give him no talk of holiness until he is himself once more." With such improvisations, I managed our journey. As the weather warmed, the prince's attitude mellowed. Perhaps he was growing reconciled to his catastrophe. Or possibly, in the prison of his lightless skull, he was teaching himself new tactics for meeting his changed existence. He talked almost idly of himself, his downfall, his humiliation. He spoke of the power that had been his in terms that said unmistakably that he had no illusions about ever recapturing it. He talked of his wealth, his women, his jewels, his strange machines, his changelings and musicians and servitors, the masters, and even fellow dominators who had knelt to him. I will not say that at any time I liked him, but at least at these times I recognized the suffering human being behind his impassive mask. He even recognized in me a human being. I know it cost him much. He said, "The trouble with power, Watcher, is that it cuts you off from people. People become things. Take yourself. To me, you were nothing but a machine that walked around watching for invaders. I suppose you had dreams, ambitions, angers, all the rest. But I saw you as a dried-up old man without any independent existence outside of your guild function. Now I see much more by seeing nothing. What do you see? You were young once, Watcher. You had a town you loved, a family, a girl even. You chose, or had chosen for you, a guild. You went into apprenticeship. You struggled, your head ached you, your belly griped you. There were many dark moments when you wondered what it was all about, what it was for. And you saw us ride by, masters, dominators, and it was like comets going past. Yet here we are together, cast up by the tides on the road to Paris. And which of us is happier now? I am beyond happiness or sorrow, I said. Is that the truth? Is that the truth, or is it a line you hide behind? Tell me, Watcher. I know your guild forbids you to marry, but have you ever loved? Sometimes. And are you beyond that now? I am old, I said evasively. But you could love. You could love. You're released from your guild vows now, eh? You could take a bride. I laughed. Who'd have me? Don't speak that way, you're not that old. You have strengths. You've seen the world. You understand it. Why, in Paris, you could find yourself some wench who... He paused. Were you ever tempted while you still were under your vows? Just then a flyer passed overhead. She was a woman of middle years, struggling a little in the sky, for some daylight remained to press on her wings. I felt a pang, and I wanted to tell the prince, yes, I was tempted. There was a little flyer not long ago, a girl, a child, Avluella. And in my way, I loved her, though I never touched her. And I love her still. I said nothing to Prince Enric. I looked, though, at that flyer, freer than I because she had wings. And in the warmth of that spring evening, I felt the chill of desolation enfolding me. Is it far to Paris? The prince asked. We will walk, and one day we will get there. And then, for me, an apprenticeship in the Guild of Rememberers and a new life. For you, I hope to find friends there, he said. We walked on, long hours each day. There were those who went by and offered us rides, but we refused. For at the checkpoints the invaders would be seeking such wandering members of the nobility as the prince. We walked a tunnel miles long under sky-storming mountains sheathed in ice, and we entered a flat land of farming peasants, and we paused by awakening rivers to cool our toes. Golden summer burst upon us. We moved through the world, but were not of it. We listened to no news of the conquest, although it was obvious that the invaders had taken full possession. In small vehicles they hovered everywhere, seeing our world that now was theirs. I did the bidding of the prince in all ways, including the unpleasant ones. I attempted to make his life less bleak. I gave him a sensation of being still a ruler, albeit of only one useless-souled watcher. I taught him, too, how best to masquerade as a pilgrim. From what little I knew, I gave him postures, phrases, prayers. It was obvious that he had spent little time in contact with the will while he reigned. Now he professed faith, but it was insincere, part of his camouflage. In a town called Dijon, he said, "Here I will purchase eyes." Not true eyes. The secret of making such replacements perished in the second cycle. Out among the more fortunate stars, any miracle is available for a price, but our Earth is a neglected world in a backwater of the universe. The prince might have gone out there in the days before conquest to purchase new sight, but now the best that was available to him was a way of distinguishing light from dark. Even that would give him a rudiment of sight. At present, he had no other guidance than the reverberator that warned him of obstacles in his path. How did he know, though, that in Dijon he would find a craftsman with the necessary skills? And with what would he meet the cost? He said, "The man here is a brother of one of my scribes. He is of the Guild of Artificers, and I often bought his work in Rome. He'll have eyes for me." And the cost? I am not entirely without